I took the night shift at the old hospital a few weeks ago. I was 32, working extra hours to help pay for school. I thought it would be a good experience. I never expected what I encountered. The hospital was big and old. It had flickering lights and peeling paint. The air smelled like disinfectant and something musty. I felt uneasy, but I told myself it was just a job. I've never stopped thinking about it. During my second night, I walked through the empty halls. It was too quiet, almost eerie. I found an unlocked supply room and stepped inside. I froze. Medical equipment sat on the floor in strange patterns. It felt off. I shook it off, assuming it was just leftover chaos from the day's shift. Strange things kept happening. Around midnight, I started hearing voices. They were faint, echoing off the walls. I thought they might be from patients, but the rooms were empty. My heart raced as I continued my rounds. I felt a chill. Something was wrong. That I checked the monitors. A few flickered inconsistently. Gurneys were moved around, but I didn't see anyone. My anxiety grew. I wanted to leave, but I needed the pay. Maybe I was just tired, I told myself. One night, I saw a figure dart down the corridor. I called out, but there was no response. Suddenly, I felt cold, like a draft rushed past me. I ran to see, but no one was there. Just the empty halls and my rising panic. Each night grew stranger. I walked through the dimly lit corridors. The feeling of being watched never went away. I was jumpy, hearing things I couldn't explain. Was it just my imagination? I didn't know. It felt real. Then I saw it again. A shadow at the end of the hall. I called out, but the figure vanished. My heart pounded. I felt a knot in my stomach. That I returned to the supply room, hoping to make sense of it all. But the equipment was still there, arranged in a way that made no sense. I wanted to scream but held it in. Maybe I should quit. Maybe I was in over my head. During the last hours of my shift, I checked on the patients again. They slept peacefully, unaware of what lurked in the dark. I walked toward the exit when I heard a muffled voice mixed with a low whisper. "Get out," it seemed to say. I turned and stood frozen. "Who's there?" I asked. The whispering stopped. My breath caught in my throat, and I glanced down the hall. Nothing was there. Just shadows. Then someone whispered my name. "Jake." I realized I wasn't alone. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. My heart raced faster than I could think. There was something in the darkness, and it wanted me to leave. I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew right then, I had to get out. I didn't look back as I fled down the hall and out into the night. I never returned to that old hospital. I didn't sleep much after that night. I was haunted by what happened at the hospital. The whispers still echoed in my mind. I felt a need to understand, to find answers that were beyond my grasp. My brother tried to convince me to forget about it. "Just move on, Jake," he said. "You didn't even like that job." But I couldn't shake it off. I had to know what was going on. A few days passed, and curiosity consumed me. I decided to go back, not to work, but to investigate. I didn't want to face whatever I'd experienced, but I needed closure. It felt like a bad idea, but I couldn't ignore the pull. I gathered my courage, grabbed a flashlight, and returned to the old hospital that loomed like a shadow in the night. As soon as I stepped inside, a sense of unease washed over me. The air was cold, and the sound of my footsteps echoed in the empty halls. With each step, memories flooded back. The flickering lights, the feeling of being watched, it all rushed at me like an old friend I didn't want to see. I made my way to the supply room first. I needed answers. The door creaked open, and I was met with the same bizarre arrangement of medical equipment. I took a deeper breath, trying to calm my racing heart. I scanned the room. Aside from the equipment, everything looked the same. Then I saw something on the floor. A piece of paper, crumpled and stained. I picked it up and realized it was a page from a patient's file. The name was smudged, but the date was clear years ago. It was an old record, but there was something unsettling about it. I felt a pull, like the paper was urging me to uncover more. Just then, I heard a noise. A soft thump. I froze, listening intently. My gut twisted. I turned slowly, the flashlight beam dancing across the room. Silence pressed in around me. I was on edge, each creak of the building sending chills down my spine that I decided to step out into the hallway, clutching the paper tightly. I moved cautiously, not wanting to attract whatever presence lurked in those shadows. I walked past the patient rooms. The doors were slightly ajar, like they were inviting me to look inside. I resisted the urge. Then I saw it again, a fleeting shadow darting into the break room. My heart raced. I couldn't just ignore what was happening. I followed carefully, peeking around the corner. The break room was empty, but the chairs were pushed back as if someone had just left in a hurry. Panic surged within me. I was not alone, when I heard it again, a low whisper, closer this time. Jake. The voice sent chills down my spine. It wasn't just a feeling anymore, I was sure of it. Something wanted my attention that I stepped back, fighting the urge to run. What do you want? I called out, my voice shaky and unsure. There was no answer, but the air grew heavier. The whisper came again. Help me. Before I could process what was happening, the lights flickered wildly, and everything went dark. My breath caught in my throat. I realized I was trapped in an abyss of silence and shadow, and now I had to confront whatever awaited me. I stood in the dark, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers lingered, fading into a haunting silence that felt suffocating. I couldn't tell if I was truly alone or if something was watching me. The flashlight flickered back to life, casting narrow beams into the suffocating blackness. I moved cautiously back towards the break room, trying not to panic. That's when I noticed something, a glimmer near the edge of the table. Bending down, I squinted, my breath hitching as I realized it was a small metal object. I picked it up, feeling its cold surface against my palm. It was a key, old and rusted but clearly significant. The whispers came again, this time insistent. Jake. I felt a chill run through me, like a cold hand grazing my neck. Help me. I had to get out. The urge to bolt for the exit was overwhelming, but curiosity pulled at me. Why was this key here? Where could it lead? It felt wrong to ignore it, as if doing so would seal my fate in this grim place. Gathering my courage, I crept down the hallway, shining the light toward the old administration wing. The sound of my footsteps echoed, and I could swear the shadows stretched toward me. I reached the door to a small office, its window covered with layers of grime. I hesitated, then tried the key in the lock. To my surprise, it fit. With a click, the door swung open, revealing a dusty room scattered with old files and boxes. I stepped in, driven by a strange compulsion. The air stung with the scent of mildew. I scanned the room and felt a rush of dread as I recognized some of the old documents littered on the floor. They were patient files, just like the one I'd found earlier. As I rummaged through the papers, I stopped at one that caught my eye. The name was almost clear now. I read it aloud, Emily Carter. Familiarity washed over me. She was a girl who'd gone missing from the hospital years ago. I remembered the news stories, her case had haunted the community. The whispers returned, help me. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hallway. I jumped, the cold fear hitting me squarely in the chest. I turned, shining the flashlight toward the commotion. The break room door was flung open, swinging wildly against the wall. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but my legs felt frozen. I edged toward the door of the office and peered out. Was someone there? I felt exposed, vulnerable. Then I saw it, a silhouette standing at the far end of the hallway, just outside the break room, still as a statue. My throat tightened. It was too dark to make out any details. My pulse quickened. Emily? The figure shifted, and the whispers grew louder, swirling in my head. Jake, help me. My hands trembled, holding the flashlight like a shield. In that moment, I realized this night was only just beginning. Something dark was awakening, and I was caught right in the middle. With my heart racing, I knew I had to decide, confront the figure or flee into the darkness. I took a shaky breath, trying to gather my thoughts. The silhouette loomed larger, and I could sense its presence threatening to swallow me whole. I had no idea if it was Emily or something far worse. Emily? I said again, my voice barely a whisper. It felt foolish to call out, but I couldn't help myself. Maybe it was her. Maybe it was the chance I needed. The figure shifted again, and this time I caught a glimpse of something pale against the darkness. My heart raced as I stepped forward, the beam of my flashlight illuminating a tattered hospital gown hanging loosely on the figure. For a moment, hope flared within me until I noticed the hollow eyes staring back at me, void of any life. No, 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 I stammered, stumbling back into the office. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands shaking violently. The whispers surged louder, vibrating in my head like a swarm of angry bees. Help me. I pressed my back against the door, trying to silence the chaotic thoughts. I needed to think. If that was Emily or whatever was left of her, I couldn't just leave her here. The key was still clutched tightly in my fist, and I stumbled over to the desk. Maybe there was something here that would help me understand what was happening. I rifled through the papers again, hoping to find a clue that would make sense of it all. The room was getting colder, and the air felt heavy with unspoken secrets. The files were dated, some as far back as a decade, with notes scribbled in tight, frantic handwriting. One file caught my attention, a letter addressed to Emily's parents. Missing was scrawled in bold, black ink across the front. I opened it, my breath hitching as I read the details. Emily hadn't just gone missing, she was listed as a patient receiving treatment for severe psychological trauma. Her case had been marked urgent, yet somehow her fate was still unknown. What had happened to Emily here? And why were her whispers reaching out to me? Then I heard it again, a soft knock against the door. My heart dropped. Jake, please help me, the voice pleaded, tremulous and heart-wrenching. It was definitely Emily's voice, but the sorrow it carried sent chills down my spine. Torn between fear and a strange compulsion to save her, I glanced back at the door. What do you want from me? I managed to ask, my voice breaking slightly. Let me in, she said, but it felt wrong. The more I listened, the more I recognized something unsettling in her tone. It was as if the darkness behind her words wanted something more sinister. Suddenly, the doorknob rattled violently as if something were trying to force its way through. Panic surged. I couldn't let whatever that was in. I backed away from the door, feeling the wall against my back, then something crashed against the door with a force that rattled the whole room. The whispers transformed into anguished cries. It was time to make a choice. That I had to either confront whatever was on the other side or find a way out before it broke through. My heart raced again, but this time it was fueled by a desperate need to survive. With one last glance at the door, I made my decision. I had to find another way out of here. The moment I turned my back to the door, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. I glanced frantically around the office for an escape route. My eyes landed on a small window at the far end, half covered by drapes that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. That was it. I had to make it to that window. I sprinted toward it, my boots clomping heavily against the worn floorboards. The office felt smaller as I hurried through it, the oppressive silence broken only by the muffled chaos outside. Emily's voice continued to echo in my head. Jake, please help me. I yanked the drapes aside, but the window was sealed tight. Anger flared up inside me. I banged my fists against it, but it wouldn't budge. Damn it! I cursed under my breath. I turned back to the door, but it felt like the figure behind it was growing stronger, pressing against the wood as if it would burst through any second. There was no time to waste. I clenched my jaw and scanned the room for something, anything, I could use. My eyes caught the glint of an old fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. It might create enough of a distraction to buy me time. I rushed over, yanked it free, and aimed it at the door. "Whatever you are, stay back," I shouted, my voice trembling. I pressed the handle, releasing a thick cloud of foam directly towards the door. The chaotic sound of the whispers turned into muffled growls. I took a step back, determined but terrified. With the barrier of foam between us, I quickly returned to the window. I pointed the extinguisher at the bottom frame and smashed it against the glass. It shattered easily, scattered fragments glinting in the flashlight's beam. My heart raced. I kicked at the remaining glass, clearing a large enough space for my body. Before I could think too much about it, I climbed up and out, half falling into the narrow space below. I landed on soft grass, the night air sharp against my skin. Relief momentarily flooded me, but it quickly turned to panic. The old hospital loomed behind me, dark and foreboding. I could still hear Emily's cries, swirling in the wind like a haunting melody. With my heart pounding, I took off toward the nearest exit in the winding pathway that bordered the building. But as I ran, I noticed something strange. There were more whispers. They weren't coming from the hospital, they were coming from the trees surrounding it. I stopped, scanning my surroundings. "Show yourself," I shouted, but my voice felt weak against the cacophony of eerie sounds around me. I tried to calm my breath, but it quickened with each rustle in the underbrush. Then something caught my eye from the corner, a shadow flitting between the trees. "Who's there?" I demanded. My heart raced wildly, pounding against my ribs, that S when I saw it. A flicker of light, like a lantern, cutting through the darkness. It wasn't a flashlight, it pulsed slowly, inviting me, as if beckoning me to follow. Sweat dripped down my temples as I hesitated. What waited for me down that path? Should I trust the light, or was it more of the darkness I had just escaped? I took a deep breath and made my choice. I had to know what it was and why it was drawing me in. But with every step I took, the whispers grew louder, wrapping around me like a shroud. The light pulsed again, beckoning me further into the shadows. My instincts screamed to turn back, yet the thought of Emily's voice kept me rooted to the spot. "I'll regret this," I muttered under my breath before stepping forward. As I moved closer, the whispers turned to soft, disjointed murmurs around me. I strained to catch a word, a hint of understanding, but it slipped through my fingers like smoke. The flickering light guided my steps deeper into the trees, away from everything familiar. The ground was uneven, making me stumble as I pressed on. Suddenly, the whispers shifted, growing frantic. They sounded almost like a chant, rhythmic and urgent. I pushed through the underbrush, my heart thumping in my chest. Just as I was about to lose my nerve, I broke through the last line of trees and stepped into a small clearing. The light stood still now, illuminating a figure at the center. It shimmered like an old lantern, but no one was holding it. Instead, it hovered just above the ground. I blinked, trying to process what I was seeing. "Emily!" I called, half hoping she might be there. The light flickered uncertainly but stayed in place. The whispers erupted around me again, now a wild cacophony. They were angry, and I felt the air grow heavy. Taking a cautious step forward, I noticed that the clearing was littered with old papers and objects: a teddy bear, a broken watch, a small porcelain doll. All items that felt out of place, their presence unsettling. I could almost hear echoes of laughter and cries mingling with the whispers. As I turned to inspect the items, the ground beneath me trembled slightly. A rush of adrenaline shot through me. I had to get out. Just as I considered running, I heard a voice, clear and piercing. "Help us." The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I looked around, searching for the source. "Who's there?" I shouted, adrenaline coursing through me. The voice didn't respond, but the light pulsed brighter as if urging me onwards. A line of shadows began to emerge from the edges of the clearing, moving closer. I squinted into the darkness, trying to see what they were. The whispers grew louder, filling my head with doubt and fear. "Run," I told myself. My instincts kicked in, and I turned back toward the path I had come from, but my feet felt heavy, as if the ground was fighting against me. The shadows were moving and it felt like they were surrounding me. I could see forms, now faint outlines of figures, their faces obscured but their intentions clear. Panic clawed at my throat, when I saw it. In the dim light, one of the figures extended a hand toward me, its eyes glowing faintly. "Please," it rasped. I stumbled back, fear bursting in my chest. I turned to run, and just then, the lantern light flickered out, plunging the clearing into darkness. Everything went quiet. It was as if the forest held its breath. I stood there, frozen, my thoughts racing. Without the light, I felt completely lost. The shadows loomed around me, their whispers muted now, leaving an eerie silence. I had to move. Just as I took a step, I felt something brush against my arm, cold and ghostly. Someone was in the clearing with me. I spun around, my heartbeat hammering. I had to escape before I became part of this strange night. I pushed forward, desperate to find the path back. My mind screamed for clarity, but all I felt was the weight of unseen eyes watching me. I had to find out what happened in that clearing, and if I was going to survive the night, I needed answers. But first, I needed to get out of the dark. I darted forward, the chilling sensation creeping over my skin like icy fingers. Each footfall felt more precarious than the last, and the shadows slithered closer, distorting the air around me. My breathing quickened, mixing with the soft rustle of leaves. I had to find the edge of the clearing. The oppressive darkness was suffocating. Then I tripped. The ground gave way beneath my foot, and I stumbled to the ground, scraping my palms against the rough earth. Panic surged as I felt the shadows loom closer. I pushed myself up and squinted through the inky blackness, searching for any sign of the way out. "Emily!" I called again, desperation lacing my voice. The name hung in the air for a moment before fading into nothing. All I could hear now was my own frantic breath and the subtle crackle of the trees whispering secrets I couldn't understand. I took a cautious step back, hoping to retrace my path, when a sudden flicker of light pierced through the darkness. I turned, and there it was. The lantern's glow had returned, illuminating the clearing. But it wasn't the same as before. It flickered like a heartbeat, and I could see the shadows more clearly now. They pulsed and swirled restlessly around the edges of the light. Without thinking, I lunged toward it, but just as I did, another voice echoed through the air, a low, sorrowful sound that made my stomach turn. "Stay with us," I froze, dread knotting in my chest. The shadows seemed to respond, crawling toward me like a tide. I thought I'd run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Panic settled over me, heavier than before. I had to know what happened here, but did I want to? In that moment, my gaze fell upon the porcelain doll lying among the debris. It seemed different now, eyes wide and staring directly at me with a depth that sent shivers down my spine. I shook my head, dismissing the thought. I couldn't waste time on a doll. I had to find Emily. I glanced back at the shadows gathering on the perimeter, an army of restless spirits or lost souls. I couldn't tell. Fear twisted my stomach. What if these figures had something to do with her disappearance? "I'm not here to hurt you," I called, trying to sound braver than I felt. "I just want to help." The figures hesitated, as if considering my words. The whispers faded, becoming an almost hesitant murmuring. Then the glowing figure stepped closer, almost breaking free of the shadow's hold. "Help us," it repeated, its glowing eyes locking onto mine. The plea was filled with urgency and loneliness. I felt a pang of empathy. What do you need? I managed to ask, heart pounding. Suddenly, the ground shook again, more violently this time. I stumbled as the earth threatened to swallow me whole. The clearing began to warp, the remnants of the past pulling at my consciousness. Just when I thought I'd lose my footing, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, a dark shape rising from the depths of the shadows. A realization hit me like a punch. I wasn't just facing echoes of the past. Something wanted to trap me here. Get back! I yelled, flinging an arm forward to ward off the encroaching darkness. But my words felt like feeble barriers against the unseen force that loomed closer, twisting the air around me. The pulsing light flickered once more, and in that instant, I understood this was no simple encounter. I was standing before an unknown danger, caught between two worlds, and it looked like one of them wanted me to stay forever. I needed to act quickly. I couldn't let the darkness snatch me away. I turned sharply, my feet finally responding to the urgency in my voice, and dashed toward the flickering lantern. As I dove into the warm glow, I felt a brief sense of safety, but it was fleeting. The shadows writhed just outside its illumination. Emily! I shouted again, my voice shaking. I hoped she could somehow hear me, wherever she was. Then I caught sight of the porcelain doll again, half buried in the leaves. It seemed to shimmer with an energy of its own. I hesitated, something about it felt important. The glowing figure remained at the threshold of light, its eyes pleading. Help us! The shadows pulsated, and I sensed their desperation. They weren't just lost. They were trapped, just like me. I took a few shaky steps forward, drawn to the doll. Its perfect smile felt mocking in this place. But as I reached for it, the ground quaked again, more ferociously, and the voice got louder. Join us. Stay no. I screamed, both in anger and fear. I threw the doll aside, and a shocking clarity surged through me. I needed to break free from this grips of whatever held these spirits captive. I couldn't let them claim me too. As I turned back to face the glowing figure, I saw something flicker in its gaze. It wasn't just pleading, there was something more, something like recognition. Emily! I called again, meeting its eyes with determination. Where is she? What happened to her? The figure wavered, the glow dimming as if responding to my desperation. The shadows responded with a murmur, echoing my question. She had whispered, the voice twisting with emotion. She helped us. I opened my mouth to ask more, but a long shadow stalked from behind the tree line. It was vast and seemed to absorb the very light around it. Panic surged again. I had to get out. This was no longer about just finding Emily. I was in danger. Leave now. I yelled to the glowing figure. It hesitated, but I could see the shadows slowly retreating from me. The dark shape was coming closer, quickening its pace, and soon, I felt the coolness of its presence creeping up my legs. Just then, the flicker of the lantern dimmed to a whisper of light. The door must be opened, the figure implored, its voice barely a breath against the shadows. What door? I shouted, feeling trapped. I scanned the clearing, searching for any exit. In that moment, I remembered the tangled roots in the ground. Maybe they were a sign. I dropped to my knees and began to dig through the earth where I had stumbled earlier. The shadows recoiled from the light, but I could still feel their influence clawing at my back. My hands worked furiously, pulling away dirt and grass. Please, help me. I cried out, hoping the figure would guide me. From above, the glowing eyes flickered uncertainly as the shadows closed in. Then everything went dark. The lantern went out entirely, leaving me in a suffocating void. Fear washed over me, and I scrambled to find any sign of hope. Finally, my fingers brushed against something hard, an edge. I pulled at it, feeling the weight of the darkness pressing closer, and screamed as I realized this was my only chance. That I had to find that door. I had to escape. And just then, I felt a cool, ethereal breeze stir around me. You found it, the voices whispered. But will you leave us behind? The question lingered in the air like a weight, and I knew I had to choose, but the dark shape was almost upon me. I gasped, my heart racing, as I felt the shadow's presence looming closer. I wanted to recoil, but I was glued to the spot, fingers wrapped tightly around the edge of whatever I had uncovered. It could be my way out, or it could be the darkness swallowing me whole. With a surge of determination, I pulled harder, feeling the earth give way. The darkness hissed, a cold breath against my neck, and I felt something shift behind me. I had to act now. Whatever I was opening had to be enough to get me through. I braced myself and yanked, feeling resistance at first, but then a sudden rush of air. With a violent tug, a trapdoor flung open, revealing a narrow passage filled with swirling mist that beckoned me inside. A fleeting glance revealed nothing but the depths of blackness, but I sensed it was my chance. The glowing figure stood at the edge of the light, its pleading eyes urging me forward. "Go!" it cried, the shadows retreating just slightly as if the figure's words had some power. I took a shaky breath and bolted for the opening. As I descended, the mist enveloped me, swirling, heavy with an electric charge. It wrapped around me like a shroud. "Emily!" I shouted again, desperate for her. "Where are you?" Then, I stumbled. My foot caught on a rung, and I fell hard onto the damp ground. I scrambled to push myself up, my hands slipping against the cool, solid earth. But that's when I saw it, a faint light flickering deeper in the tunnel. It pulsed like a heartbeat, but in the back of my mind, I could hear the whispers of the shadows. "Join us," the voices echoed, entwining themselves with the light. I shook my head, instinctively backing away, only to feel the passage constricting around me. Panic surged again. "Leave me alone!" I shouted, forcing myself to stand. The glow seemed to respond, brightening as I steeled myself against the darkness. "Emily! Please!" I cried out again, fueled by hope and fear. I sprinted toward the luminous orb, my heart hammering as I imagined finding her, safe and sound. But as I drew closer, the light transcended into an image, Emily's face, trapped in her own agony. "Help!" she mouthed silently, the darkness at her back threatening to engulf her completely. I froze. My heart sank. "No! I won't leave you." I reached for the light, but just then, the shadows surged hard, clawing at my ankles, dragging me toward the darkness. I gasped for breath, fighting against their cold grip, but they were relentless. "Help us, help her!" The voices became a cacophony of pleas, drowning out my thoughts. I was torn. Desperation clawed at me, forcing me to act. I reached out, feeling nothing but the resistance of the fog and the icy fingers of the shadows. Then, an idea flickered. I needed to show them I wasn't afraid. I shouted back at the darkness, "You can't have me. I choose to fight." That moment felt like an eternity. I waited, unsure if my words would matter. The shadows paused, their grip loosening just for a moment. That's when I felt it again, that cool breeze against my skin, as if the figures in the light were rallying behind me. "Believe!" they urged, their voices intertwining with the light, guiding my resolve. But just as I thought I could overpower the darkness, the ground beneath me trembled violently. I could sense a shift in the air, and the shadows roared, furious at my defiance. They gathered with a force that sent a chill down my spine. Then everything went still. I was alone with my thoughts in that moment of stillness, and it was terrifying. Would I lose Emily, or would I find a way to save her? A sharp crack shattered the silence. The darkness was ready for its final approach. I had to move or be consumed. "Emily!" I yelled one last time, my voice echoing in the silence. Behind me, the shadows surged forward like a tidal wave. What lay ahead was unknown, but I felt a strange pull toward the glow, and I had to follow it. The race was on. And this time, it felt like life or death. I stumbled forward as the shadows rushed behind me, a dark tide hungry for my warmth. The flickering light pulsed in time with my heart, a beacon in the chaos. I plunged deeper into the glowing mist, renewed urgency driving my feet. The whispers morphed into an agonizing chorus, "Help us! Help her," and I focused on the light ahead, determined to reach it. As I ducked through the swirling fog, a gust of wind swept over me, like a scream that felt all too real. "Please!" I cried out, "Show me the way." In response, the glow brightened, radiating warmth and hope, but also revealing the anguished faces of the shadows behind me. They twisted in their frantic movements. The moment felt significant. I was no longer just fleeing. I was fighting back. I rounded a corner in the passage, nearly losing my footing on the damp earth. My breath quickened. There was something different about the light now. It was clearer, and I could delineate forms swirling within it, figures of children, their faces familiar. Just as panic threatened to cloud my judgment, I caught a glimpse of Emily, trapped within the glow, her expression earnest and pleading. "Emily!" I called, desperate. I stretched out my hand toward the light, willing it to pull her in. "I'm here. I won't leave you." But the shadows surged, and their cold hands reached for me again, urging me to succumb. They pulled at my heels, whispering sweet temptations of surrender. "Stay with us." Fear threatened to swallow me whole. I needed clarity. "Emily!" I shouted again, this time with all the willpower I could muster. "What do I do?" Her shimmering image flickered, and I felt my heart skip a beat as she replied, her voice wrapping around me like a warm blanket, "Let go of the fear. We can break free together." In that heartbeat, I felt conviction surge within me. The darkness, that ravenous abyss, wasn't just consuming, it was feeding on my terror. I squared my shoulders, remembering those faces, the lives affected by whatever malevolence lingered in this old place. The ghosts of the past wanted liberation. The moment crystallized. "I won't abandon you." I called, willing myself forward. The shadows howled, swirling around me in a frenzy, but I envisioned Emily breaking free, enveloped in that radiant light. I let my fear melt away, allowing courage to fill the spaces it had occupied. I took a step forward, then another, breaking through the barrier of darkness. A roar of fury erupted from behind as the shadows coiled back, stung by a power they could not touch. "Emily!" I reached for the lantern's glow, bringing my hand forward until the warmth enveloped me, and the sharp chill of the shadows receded further behind. The chaotic cacophony of voices shifted into a crescendo, desperation laced within it. I focused on the light, and as I did, it expanded, wrapping itself around me like ethereal arms. Then, like a torrent breaking free, Emily stepped into the light, her presence blossoming as if shedding a heavy cloak. "Together!" she shouted, extending her hand toward mine. I lunged, our fingers brushing, and the moment brought an explosion of warmth and energy through me. Still, the shadows writhed in anger, their shrieks ricocheting around us, but we didn't falter. As our hands clasped, the darkness recoiled, battling against a force it couldn't understand. There was no turning back now. "Let us go!" I yelled, grasping her hand tighter, feeling the pull of the shadows shift as though they were losing their hold. With an anguished roar, the shadows rushed back, swirling violently and crashing against the boundary of light we had created. The lantern glowed brighter as we moved together, unleashing a force that pushed the shadows further away. With one final surge of determination, we burst through the edge of the clearing. The world around us shifted, the air lightening, and for a moment, I felt gravity loosen its grip. Like a high tide retreating, the darkness slinked away, letting out shattered echoes of desperate wails. Suddenly, I blinked, and found myself standing on the hospital grounds under the pale glow of the moon. Emily stood next to me, her presence grounding and real. We were no longer enveloped in the shadows of that clearing. The hospital loomed behind us, but this time, it felt less oppressive. We were free. But what did that really mean? As we moved away from the building, I glanced back, still unsettled by the memories that trailed behind me like wisps of smoke. The night was still, the whispers stilled, but their essence lingered in the cool air. What happens now? I asked Emily, not sure what to expect, but she simply smiled, an echo of the girl who had once been trapped. We remember, Jake. We remember and share their stories. The weight of uncertainty settled over us, as we exchanged glances filled with words unspoken. I still didn't know if the shadows had been born of grief or malice, of something human or something else entirely. I wished I could have stayed longer, to confront each spirit and tell them they weren't alone. As Emily walked away, I turned back one last time, but the hospital stood silent, a monument to secrets yet to be revealed. In the distance, I could almost hear the whispers still beckoning, urging me to return, to understand. I hesitated but felt a shiver of resolve populate my spine. Perhaps one day, I'd have the courage to face it all again. For now, I took a deep breath and stepped into the cool embrace of the night, leaving behind what was, while carrying the echoes of the past into tomorrow.